Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Joji.
Welcome back to another episode of the Deconstructed Woman podcast. Today, we're going to finish up the conversation we started a couple of weeks ago on achieving more in your 60s and when you were younger. We talked about the first four a couple of weeks ago. This is an article by LaShean Brown from September 4th of a blog. And the first four that we talked about were embracing lifelong learning, prioritizing health and fitness, practicing mindfulness daily, and fostering strong social connections. And today we're going to be talking about the remaining four, which starts with embracing failure as number 5, cultivate an attitude of gratitude, number 6, find purpose and passion, number 7, and practice resilience, number 8. And just as a little bit of a tieback, we had actually published this podcast last week, the first four, and I had thrown out a survey to see if people would respond to which one of the first four they thought was going to pose them the greatest challenge as they got older. And every single person who responded said practicing mindfulness was going to be the most challenging. And I know that Alyssa and I, that's what we said when we responded. And so we are part of the group here, feel that the other three are a lot easier to do. And mindfulness is just it's something so simple, but yet it is very difficult to stay in the present all the time. Melissa, what are your thoughts about those poll results?
Yeah, obviously that's what I said was a challenge for me. I think you hear a lot about like keeping your health and exercising and, kind of some of the other ones. Like I think that we hear those a lot. And I think mindfulness is definitely, it's been around for a very long time, but I think that it's finding its way as people want to be more present, that they're realizing that, worrying really is worrying about the past or worrying about the future. And so being present kind of pulls you out of that pattern. And so I think that's why it's encouraged and why it has such great benefits. But I definitely think that it's a challenge at times because of the fact that you don't always make or have the time for it. And it's something that you have to be mindful of that. And I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I will say that yesterday evening, I was trying to stop ruminating about something and just like, oh, I've already done what I can do about it. I'm going to, not worry about it. I'm going to stay like present. I'm going to focus so that I could sort of interrupt the thoughts of it going back to the thing that I was like obsessing about and just being so intentional and purposefully trying not to go back and to just stay focused on, okay, this is where I am right now. I need to be present focused. I mean, it took all the willpower I had to actively work on this particular goal. And at the end, I was more successful than if I hadn't, done it. But at the same time, how often I had to come back to the present to stay focused was really in itself a lesson because it is so easy to slip back into that monkey mind or those repeating patterns or what's familiar with that anxiety. And so just recently, I was trying to overcome the temptation to slide back into what, almost I felt more comfortable worrying about than actually just staying present in this moment. So just a real life example of how hard that is to do, especially when you're trying to combat anxiety. But jumping into the second four of this series, embrace failure. It almost seems like an oxymoron to say embrace failure. And when you hear those two words put together, Alyssa, how do you think that makes you more productive?
Well, I think that so it's, this is something that I struggle with. I think it's counteracting the perfectionism that a lot of people experience or, comes to the forefront. We want to do things perfect. We want to do things in a way that we all want to be successful in one way or another. And so I think that at least for me, it was drilled in, perfection. But have heard just over the last or so, I was listening to a lot of presentations in a summit, and they were talking about having, can't remember what the phrase was, but it's not to have a perfect life, but like, and to do things in practice rather than perfection. And so I think that that leads to the idea that you're going to fail. So one of the women I was listening to said, an 80% good household. Again, I listened to a lot of summits on like organizing and decluttering, and they were talking about, like if 80% of your house is clean, that's not so bad. But I'm always striving for like 100%. And so that feels like I'm failing. If I'm only doing 80%, it feels like I'm failing that 20%. And I think that it's about letting that go and being able to embrace that and say, I'm doing the best that I can. It's okay that it's not perfect. It's okay that it's not, you know, to these very high standards, because those high standards require me to push myself further than I'm able or willing to go. And so really embracing the fact that I mean, that's not a perfect example of like failure, but again, like that, I think when you have that perfectionistic personality or a mindset, I think that you will struggle as I have. And I'm hopeful that there's others out there that can relate to that, that you just have to let it go sometimes and say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. I make them every single day, especially with my kids. And the concept of repair has been transformational in my relationship with my family, because it's not that I'm aiming to fail or to make mistakes, but at least I have a way of being able to reset that and be able to say, okay, I didn't do such a good job today, but I can reset. I can repair with my kids. I can repair with my husband, repair with friends, whomever, and really go from there. So I think embracing failure, at least those are two examples that come to the forefront of my mind, are really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the article really builds on what you're talking about to say, if you see failure not as a setback, but, something to learn from as you move forward to success. And so that it's not one or the other, but it's really what have you learned and how do you progress and keep moving in the right direction? Because getting it 100% done every single time perfectly is not realistic. And there are a lot of people who don't try just because they know they're not going to hit 100. And so then they like talk themselves into not doing anything. And so, really, the idea about, adopting a growth mindset or accepting what your limitations are, given the realities that you face in your life, exactly what you're talking about, is what they are saying is critical. And that you can't, if you seek perfection and that's the only thing you'll accept, then you're doomed to fail anyway. And so creating that acceptance of your circumstances or the fact that there is a lot to learn from. I think the lot to learn from is really where I sit. I tell people all the time, and I tell myself that, sometimes you learn more from a failure than you do success. Some things that come very easy to people, it just seems so easy, so, effortless that sometimes you miss some of the learning that you have when challenges are naturally part of the process. So I don't trust things that come really easy. I rather have a little bit of resistance as I'm learning because then I feel like, okay, this is really like you're going to really learn it, or there's going to be something, you know, significant there that you are using as a point to learn from instead of if it's just smooth. I don't know, it's my own bias, but I actually like a little resistance. Makes it feel like it's more of a inherent kind of stronger learning process than something that is so easy. The next idea that they talk about is cultivating an attitude of gratitude. And this is one of my favorite things. It's something that I've been working on for a long time. And I clearly understand the benefits of listing out the things that I'm excited about and happy for and grateful for. I've talked before on this podcast about a gratitude journal and writing in it nightly so that I can recap sort of what I am thankful for as the day ends. And that allows me to end my day on a positive note. And I've also talked about the exercise I do that if I'm in a funk and I can't really get out of it, the one way I know that will work is if I start listing out the things that I'm grateful for and the things that I know that I'm blessed to have in my life. And that within a couple minutes will automatically shift my mood to realize that, you know what, compared to a lot of people in this world, I have a lot of things going right in my life. And that this temporary, you know, feeling that I'm having, it won't last. And usually going through this exercise will end me in a better place than I started. What do you think about gratitude? I know you and I share this attitude, but how do you cultivate gratitude given the fact that you do have a very, very busy life and you have lots of little roller coasters throughout the day? How do you find that you adapt into your life this attitude of gratitude?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it again, it kind of goes back to that mindfulness too. And it's kind of that form of staying in the present moment and recognizing what do I have, what, people say gratitude or blessings, like what is what is here in front of me. And it actually makes me think of, because I just finished the series The Hunger Games with the kids. And so we were watching the movie, and at the very, hopefully I'm not ruining this for anybody, it's an older movie, but Katniss Everdeen, the main character at the very end, says that the way that she deals with all of the nightmares and trauma of things is by essentially saying all the good events that have happened in her life and really being grateful for all the good that came out of all the bad. And so that's what it made me think of when you were saying, this concept. And I think that that's one of those ways that you counteract, when failures or difficult moments happen, to be able to say, okay, this is happening, but I have my health, or if it's, that's what what's failing or what's not working, I have a roof over my head. And if you don't have that, like I have food. And if, like I could think like kind of going down the line of what do you have that you can be thankful for. And some people who have very little, really embrace this. And I think that that's something to be said, because a lot of times it's just very difficult to know, where you're going to be, and what that's going to look like. And so I think that gratitude is something that is a mindset shift, and allows for you to recognize what is around you. And I think that it does make you really, to look at things in a different light. And I think that that's always beneficial, because similar to, you know, embracing failure, it's kind of moving away from that negativity and that pessimism, and moving towards, what do I have? What can I be grateful for? How can I view this in a positive light?
I will say too, it was probably one of the most significant parenting lessons that I shared with my daughter was helping her learn at a young age that she should be grateful for what she has. And I know this comes around a lot around Thanksgiving and we are in the fall and we're getting closer to Thanksgiving every day, but I do feel like kids go through an age. I think my daughter was probably 9 years old or so when she was talking about what everybody else had and what she didn't have. And she just thought that everybody had so much more than her. And it was really an important opportunity to help her because it's just inevitable. Your children are going to want things that they either can't have yet because they're not old enough, or that they may never have because it doesn't fit into the budget that we have. And so I think that, especially living in the areas that we live, there's always going to be people who have more than what our kids do, but there are also people that have less than what our kids do. And I think it's really important to teach our children that we are some of the lucky ones, and there are always going to be people who are going to mimic this exact situation throughout your life. There's always going to be people who have more, and there's going to be always people that who have less, and that's important for them to acknowledge, and that that's it's important not to undervalue what you do have, because there are so many people who would be so thankful to have what we do have. And yet you can't see that if you're always comparing yourself to other people. So it is something that I think works really well to teach children at any age, because it just starts to, build up a little bit of buffer against the peer pressure they will have as they get older into elementary school and go into middle school. Because that's just something that every parent has to struggle with because there's always going to be people who have more than you do. And so it's just going to be a life challenge. And I think if you start working on it from when they're younger, then there's no surprises, as they get older. But that, is a very important lesson that we can all learn at whatever age we are. But I think it's something that we can't ever start too early on. Number seven in this article is finding purpose and passion. And this is a topic that I just really love because I think that as you go through the different ages in your life, it might be something that obviously shifts for you as you have more or less time. And so I guess a good question, Alyssa, is, I know you've spoken about how what you thought you might do as a career changed from your 20s to your 30s. But do you have anything more that you'd like to talk about finding purpose and passion and how important or not important or, how that fits into your life currently, given everything else that you're dealing with?
Well, I think I mean, I know that we've spoken about it, but I think that like finding purpose and passion. So I think we talked about it from the perspective of like you said, like career wise. But I think passion I took pause on that phrase or that idea because I think that passion is something I'm still trying to find. And I know, I think that a lot of times people reflect back on like, what was I passionate about in my earlier years, as a child or early adolescence, like what brought me happiness, what sparked joy in me then. And I think that a lot of times life kind of shifts us. And so I've talked about how, I was a musical theater major and I shifted to criminal justice because that was more secure and more, you know, I could kind of see like a profession and a career in that. And so I moved away and so I know singing is like a passion of mine, but now I'm like, well, how would I bring that back into it? And I just was watching This Is Us, which I really love that show. I'm only on season 3, so if anyone else has watched it, I think that it's just for whatever reason I fall upon TV shows that speak to me in that moment. So I've watched various TV shows. I usually watch them once all the seasons are uploaded or streaming, so I don't have to wait for episodes to show. But anyway, I was watching the episode where Bethany, one of the main characters, decides that she was thinking and reflecting back on her passion for dancing. And so she decides, because she was terminated from her job, to become a dance instructor. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, how amazing is that? And her life circumstances allowed for her to do that in that moment. But, just as she was getting situated, life throws curveballs at you. So I won't give away what happens next, but it was one of those things where I was like, oh man, like the idea of really pursuing your passion, but 20, 30 years later, what does that look like? So that was just one example that I just recently saw, but I think that that can look a lot of different ways, whether it's painting or, performing arts or whatever your passion may be. I think that, or like writing a book, like I think a lot of people, are like, yeah, I'd love to write a book. That was a passion of mine. I think that as you get kind of a little bit older and things settle, I think that those passions should come back into the mix, that we shouldn't necessarily let them go off to the wayside or be, thinking, well, that's not going to pan out, but taking a risk and trying it out. I think that that's always beneficial.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that, the word passion spoke to you and the word purpose spoke to me. And so for me, I will say regularly in my life, I think to myself, what is the purpose? Like, why am I here? What am I meant to do? And that's something that I reflect on from time to time. And I'm sort of in that mode right now, thinking about what, what have I lost sight of it? And I think it's really important to do things you're passionate about and things that make you feel like you have purpose and you're going to change the world in some way or contribute to it in a way before you and leave your mark before you leave. And so that is something that I'm always thinking about. And I think that everything that I do adds to purpose. I don't necessarily know what that is yet exactly, but I've been doing some reading on the Japanese word, which the word that comes most closely to sort of serving your purpose is called ikigai. And and it's just something that means, living with purpose. And so it's something that I've been doing some reflection on to say, do I have any more ideas? I feel like I have more time on my hands now. And so if this is the time to figure out what that's going to be like and putting into high gear since, I have more time on my hands than I did it in the past. But at the same time, carving out the time to do it without getting complacent or, not working as to figure out what that is. And I think sometimes it's really hard, like you were saying, even about being passionate, about really being honest about what brings you joy and associating those feelings of joy, fullness with, whatever you're spending your time doing. And in your examples of music and dance, I think one could arguably say that you can find some smaller scale version of finding a way to get that outlet in your life. And it's just being able to figure out how to do that, given the circumstances that you have in front of you. And so I think that there is a lot that goes into making it happen. But I also think that it is like recharging your battery. So when you do even a little bit of time of your week committed to what brings you joy, I think that you will find that there's a little bit extra little kick of energy or enthusiasm or something that joy then gives back to you in dividends that you might not realize. And so I think it is a really, really great thing to try to do because tying back to the idea of being more productive as you get older, I think when you find the things that give you joy and eliminate the things that don't bring you joy, and those are things that you might be able to let go of and fill your time with more joyful activities, then I could see how that makes you more productive in your older age. So that I think is another wonderful lesson in this article of the things we've covered so far. The last thing is practicing resilience. And I think in certain ways, this is sort of the one that ties everything together because I think that it encompasses things like failure and mindfulness and lifelong learning and fitness goals and all the other things that we've talked about. But resiliency is really being able to bounce back and to, continue down the road you're traveling and do it, with a positive attitude. Alyssa, how do you see resilience and how do you describe it?
Don't think that there's necessarily like a definition that jumps out at me. I mean, I think essentially how I view it is like you're faced with challenges and you keep persevering, you keep pushing through. That's resilience to me. And I was thinking actually, because we were spending some time with a lot of our friends this weekend, and I have quite a few friends that are 60 and older. And, I was kind of listening to them as we were talking about things that were going on. And so I was tying these two together because, the article it's about, after 60. And a lot of people were talking about like health complications. And again, it's the idea of whatever life throws at you, being able to just keep pushing on, to keep saying like, okay, that this is really hard, whatever it is. And not to say that, it gets easier, but to say, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing through. I'm going to keep moving forward because there's people who rely on me or because I have really going back to that, like, because I have a purpose in life. And some people are talking about, parents are passing away or friends are starting to become ill and pass away. And so again, it's really about that ability to, even in light of those experiences or in light of those hardships, to say I'm going to keep going. And that to me is resilience. I think there's probably a lot of different ways to view it, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah. And I think that, every one of us probably experienced resiliency in a different way. We know that humans are very resilient. We're survivors and we definitely can get through difficult times, come through the other end. And as long as you take care of yourself and understand that most of us want to live to be at least, X fill in the blank But I think it's also important to realize that the journey, this is the way the article closes, and it really resonates with me is that it's not about 60. There's no magic at 60. It's really about understanding, the journey that you're on and appreciating that and taking care of yourself and practicing these habits so that you improve your chances of living for as long as you'd like to live. And so it really is, something that when you take it into the big picture, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about practicing good habits so that our mental and physical health is strong and our mind is flexible and can adapt to whatever life throws our way. And so, exactly what you're talking about, all of these things that we've covered from 1 to 8, really talk about how to do that well so that you don't live in regret and so that you don't find yourself limiting your self because of the setbacks that may have happened. And there are several people that I know that are, maybe have regrets that happened in their 20s, but that was 45 years ago. And they're still feeling like, man, I should have made the other choice. And it's like, well, when do you move on from that? Why hold yourself back even more? I mean, 45 years is enough, and now you need to really figure out how to square that out and move forward. And so I think that's really what this article is about, is that these 8 things are just little mini steps in sort of the walk of life and how to keep yourself grounded and positive and really striving, to bring out the best in you and to meet your potential. And so I think it's a great article. I think it keeps these things in front of us. And I don't know, Alyssa, if you have some final thoughts or if you'd like to close us out.
Yeah, I'll close this out. And I think one of the things that I think you mentioned kind of very early on in the beginning of this episode, and we talked about in when we are talking about the first four as well, is that you can start these things at any time. So even though the article is about, 60 and beyond, I think that, this is something that the earlier we try to strive for these things, the better that we're going to be, whether it's in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s or beyond, or even in your 20s and 30s too. So I think at any stage of the game you can be more mindful. You can develop healthier relationships, exercise, gratitude. I mean, all of these things are beneficial to somebody regardless. And so I think it's really about you know evaluating where you're at and going from there. So hopefully this conversation has been helpful to you, or at least struck a chord. Maybe you're sitting over there looking at, what is my passion? So again, this is always the idea, is that we're trying to start the conversation and you take it from here. So if you'd like to reach out to us, let us know how you enjoyed this. You can reach us at the Deconstructed Woman podcast Facebook group. Jump in there, where we do, like Joji mentioned, we have polls. We post our episodes as they come out, and we try to kind of foster those conversations in a group setting. Or you can leave us a voice message here on the platform, or email us at the deconstructedwoman@gmail.com. So we'd love to hear from you in any way that you want to reach out to us. And make sure that if you enjoyed this episode, that you subscribe to our podcast as well as like it, because then it will get out to more people. And we would love to grow our community and really have people check out what we're doing here. So thank you for your time, and we hope to talk soon.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions? Or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.